Afternoon all. I thought we could have a look at another classic instructive game. This time Sergey Karjakin, I think, was about 16 at the time of this game, playing against Anand. So this was in Corus Line 2006. So Sergey playing white kicked off with e4. I have done an annotation of this before, and I've reviewed it. And I think when we look at this game today, you've probably forgotten all that analysis if you did see that previous video. But beyond the analysis, just think about access paths. A very simple concept, both for the kings and how to get to them. Just a very, very simple concept. Remember Einstein's quote, make things as simple as possible, but not simpler. Let's just think about that in the course of events of this game. Of course, there are very detailed, specific tactical finesses of particular positions, which will factor in as well. But let's try and look at the concept of both sides trying to get to each other's king in this game. So the Sicilian defence, a very fighting defence, creating imbalances straight away. And we go into a Najdorf. So after knight f6, knight c3, a6, very popular move with both Kasparov and Fischer. So the Najdorf is like one of the top variations, most popular, most theoretically analysed within the Sicilian defence. Bishop e3. So this is a really aggressive start position. White is declaring an intention potentially to play like f3, as though black has played a dragon. So this kind of English attack as well, it's been known as this English attack formation, or this anti-dragon formation, is being reused against this setup where black hasn't even fianchettoed the bishop yet, but white is preparing potentially to castle queenside, try and smash through black's king if it dares castle on the king side. Okay, e5. Okay, we weakens d5 slightly, but it does give black immediate access some dark squares, f4 and d4. Kicks the knight as well. So knight b3. Given that the bishop's already on e3, it will take white another move to try and loosen black's control of d5 here with bishop g5. Can white afford that simple play on d5 here? Well, bishop e6 is also now eyeing d5 straight away. And okay, potentially as well, you know, it looks harmless if black could take, you know, maybe this bishop could be on this diagonal. So bishop g5 isn't so lucrative here for a positional idea of d5. So maybe it's still about castling queenside, trying to smash through to black's king if it dares castle kingside. So f3 sets up that formation, cuts g4 out from black's knight, for example, to kick that bishop. And okay, we have potentially d5 from black here, but it might not be that good in this position. d5. There might be a reason why, for example, the c5 square might be loosened at the end of it. So what did Anand play? We could just quickly engine check if d5, if there's something wrong with it. It's a slight advantage for white apparently. Takes us about 0.2. Takes. Okay, white ends up here with bishop pair, and they're coming down here. They're quite useful, this bishop pair here. Slight advantage for white. So black's perhaps not too keen on that. Let's go back to the game continuation and turn off engine. So bishop e7. So Anand, does he have a lot of guts to face this variation? Is he really going to castle kingside and let white castle queenside? Yes. So some of the most exciting positions in the Sicilian defence are in this scenario, where both sides have put their king, you know, queenside, kingside. How can white get some access routes to the black king here? How can black? Well, you might think c-file. The king can always move though. You might also think that part of black's plan might be b5 later and b4. Whoops, b4, and try and weaken e4, and maybe, you know, getting a diagonal on e4 if the king's on b1. That's another kind of access route. a5, a4, a3 is a bit of a slow plan. You know, maybe white just plays b3 at the end of that, keeps the position closed. both sides want to sort of open up the lines. Maybe white wants to play, you know, G4, pardon me, G4, G5, or H4, H5, and like this, G6 to open up this file. There's access routes for both sides, and the speed of both sides, you know, being able to deliver, you know, resources to the opponent's king is very interesting. How can that be accelerated for both sides? So let's see. Knight BD7. Okay, not touching pawns yet. Knight BD7 might imply, for example, Knight B6, Knight C4. Get rid of this light square bishop, which potentially could be useful on this diagonal one day. But at the moment, the bishop's on E6. It might also imply just B5, Knight B6, maybe Knight A4. So there's a few possibilities of the knight. G4. So not only positionally, it's loosening black's control of D5 if this knight's dislodged, but again, a sort of battering ram as well could be an implication. You know, to aim for G6 to get the H file opened up. So what does black do here? B5. Okay, the knight's kicked. Does it want to go to H5? Is there a problem with H5? Or does it go back to E8? If it goes back to E8, what about these guys being connected to each other? They're being disconnected. Is this knight ever going to come out? Would it come out via C7? Would it have to play G6? But then surely that's a biting pawn. If black has to play a pawn to G6, H file trouble. So is the knight really going to retreat? If it goes to H5, is it a target there? So what does Anand play here against this? And he's loosening, you know, D5. Is it a bit of a concern? He plays actually B4. He counterattacks. Okay, because he's relying on this check. It will be check here. If takes, it will be check, taking the queen. Okay, very tense moment here, counterattacking. But isn't this pawn a bit loose? This pawn here, isn't it going to be a bit loose potentially? Is D5 a bit loose? Knight goes to E2. Okay, now Knight E8, not Knight H5, but here Knight H5 could be welcomed because white would seem to have perhaps Knight G3. If Knight G3, what is this knight doing? Is it going to just accelerate white's H file? End of game if Queen H2. That would spell the end of game, surely. Very difficult to defend that position. So the knight is forced to disconnect here. It's going back. It has to go back here, surely. So we've got disconnected rooks. We've got white with seemingly pleasant control of D5, and this pawn, is it going to be forming part of a battering ram anytime soon? What does black have here, resourcefully, to show? F4 now. Putting on the squeeze, really, because F5 imminent threat. If white can get rid of that light square bishop, say a take like this, then G6 is amplified in effect because this diagonal could be hijacked by this bishop. Imagine that bishop coming to that diagonal with G6. It would spell total disaster. If the bishop surely exchanges on B3, it would be an unmitigated disaster. And what of E takes F4? You know, maybe knight takes F4, knight D5, or maybe knight H5 and rook G1, and things can start pointing at the black king again. You know, what about bishop D4 here, and then knight F6? So this F4 looks kind of scary implications. What does Anand do? He plays A5. He counterattacks again. F5. Does the bishop really want to take on B3? No, A4 counterattacking again. And again potentially leaving two knights, two pieces attacked, but again there's, you know, takes on A2 with queening if white dared to be greedy to take the knight here, the bishop and then the knight. Now knight D4, very surprising move. What is going on here? Actually, there's a threat of knight C6 now because queen and bishop. The queen would have to move, the knight takes E7. But if takes, surely that threat can be parried. But then the bishop's also attacked, so it's actually a double attack, threatening F takes and also knight C6, forking queen and bishop here. So in this position, okay, it was taken, so we've got a virtual double attack. This threat and this threat, which will be hitting queen and bishop. What about access paths again? That simple notion. If bishop takes a2, we've got knight c6. Very important nuances in the position. You don't really want a knight to arrive on e7 with check, because then the king being forced to move. You could have something like bishop d4 after, or you could have g6 or f6. These could all be pretty devastating ideas. Okay, what does black play here? He plays b3. He's inviting both knight c6 and f takes, but white plays just king b1. King b1, suspending these two threats of knight c6 and f takes. Another move.
Check.
Check. Okay. Knight takes c2, so releasing this threat completely now, but this bishop can't now take on a2. Can it? Or can it? Or can it play bishop b3? Where else can it go? It's going to be one of those two, surely. Bishop b3 it is. So Anand is trying to wrench open an access route here, the a file finally, by giving the bishop there. Is it going to be taken? Is this too dangerous, this a file? Is black going to be smashed with f6? Is this pawn a bit looser? Is that a source of attack? This kind of access route, if it's possible, on the diagonal. Okay. Takes, and we have a very scary road now to the white king. So at the moment, we're equal on material, aren't we? Three minor pieces, queen and two rooks. Pawn situation, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. But this a file is a little bit scary. Knight a3. We have still huge disconnection issues at the moment. Knight e5. Okay, one knight is improving. Now just h4. So what does h4 do? Okay, it supports g5, just in case maybe bishop g5 potentially was an issue. So that means the bishop might be free to do something. Maybe bishop d4, or it can be supporting h5 and g6. Okay, what does Anand do here? Rook a5. Now this is a really nifty move. Not only celebrating this access route to the white's king, but this one. Because if the queen can go here, it's exerting influence on e4, as well as threatening rook takes a3. Okay, but all this takes time, surely. Queen c3 now. So is this pawn going to be munched as well? Is f6 on the cards? Is bishop d4 dangerous? Is queen takes e5 on if the bishop wasn't protecting the queen, because we've got the rook pressure? It's looking a little bit loose, this position, isn't it? Queen a8 hitting e4, hitting a3. So if queen takes b3, queen e4 might be pretty nasty, and that rook will be loose. If bishop d3, there'll be queen takes e3 maybe. So does e4 really need to be defended? Well, from the evidence of the game, it was defended. Is rook takes a3 on in this position, though? Or is there adequate defence? Is there no really attacking resources at the moment for black? If rook takes a3 was played, maybe just queen b2, what would there be in this position? I think just queen b2. And where would be the attack? Let's just engine check that. That's harmless, just to make sure. No, this wouldn't be harmless because of taking and knight c4. So let's go back there and investigate that. In this position, is rook a3 refuted by something else? Okay, takes, so not queen b2 here. So an imminent threat of what though? Check, maybe king c1, without this rook being ready for the c file. Okay, white might be better just with rook d2 apparently. Rook d2, a clinical move. The knight can't really go, because the rook's now holding a2, so the queen could munch there. So without this rook coming in on the c file or the a file, white seems to be better here, technically. Knight g4, bishop d4. Okay, white's better there. Let's turn the engine off there and go back. Okay, so rook a3 is out of the question. how do we get these resources into the game? How can we use this access route? Or maybe this one. Now here shows Anand's tactical genius. I wonder if you can spot the move that he played in this position. So you want to celebrate basically two access routes very, very quickly without getting smashed to things like f6 or g6 or something like, even maybe queen takes b3 could be dangerous, because then maybe g6 is amplified because of that access route. Or you might have bishop d4. There's a variety of things to be thrown at black here. There might even be a simple idea of queen takes b3, rook c1, or even perhaps rook d5. Just exchange off this attacking bit and just make things uncomfortable for black after that, because the bishop is reinforcing control of d5. Okay, brilliant move. I'll give you 10 seconds. I think it's at this point of the game that this brilliant move, absolutely brilliant move, was played. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds here, or you might want to pause the video. What would you play here to celebrate your access routes to the white king? So King's Crusher quiz move to crush the opponent's king, King's Crusher style. 10 seconds starting now. Okay. Wow. Knight c7, totally unthinkable. Is he really giving up the knight and then the bishop will be attacked? Isn't d6 crumbling if this bishop moves? Well, actually, okay, after queen takes c7, guess the move now. Think about these access routes. How would you celebrate them? I know you've just given up one piece. The materialistic among you will be horrified already, but what is the move now? 10 seconds starting from here. Okay. Rook c8, giving up the bishop as well. Double piece sack. Okay. Now, you have to be careful to the nuances of the position. It's okay having a concept like access routes, but there are specific nuances in this position. This queen is potentially attacking f7 with the help of g6. It's also got control and an eye on a7, which means specifically that some tactics might be refutable in this position. For example, rook takes a3 looks really tempting maybe, but maybe it fails. If we follow rook a3, and let's engine check this after, but there might be in this position queen a7 defending a2, for example. Let's just make sure of that. In this position, rook takes a3 would seem a simple, straightforward thing to do. Takes. Okay, now imagine queen takes a3. Yes, queen a7 plus 7.47. This is where the details of positions can completely destroy simple concepts. Queen a7 is a very, very important resource, it turns out, to defend a2 here. If we try an improvement though, is there an improvement? Is there knight c4? Now I'm engine checking this again. Queen a7 to the rescue. Might be a good move. Check. Check. It gets a bit hairy. Yes, it does get hairy. Queen c8, but now another fantastic resource could be thrown at black. Bishop c5. This is engine analysis now. Territory. But we're talking +4 here. Plus 4.43. Let's turn off the engine. So, I just wanted to emphasize something there. Specific resources. Although you've got these access routes, you can't just hammer through very simply with rook a3, neglecting the opponent's resources. So what does black do here? He's more subtle about it. Anand is more subtle. Okay, he's got a lot of attacking pieces here left still. But yes, he is two pieces down. Okay, if it's not rook takes a3, what is it to celebrate the a file? I wonder if you can spot the move. If I give you 10 seconds, I've eliminated that from your consideration, I hope. So what do you play here if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? Okay, it's not spectacular, it's knight c4. Just get rid of this knight. With the rook on, you're still controlling a7 against queen a7s. If the knight dares take, you just play rook a1 mate. So now, what about this queen implication of attacking f7? Can these bishops not attack the king? Is the king really not being attacked here, where white is 2 pieces up in this position? Okay, the knight's also attacking e3. Is that bishop going to move? What does Sergey do here? Okay. He plays g6. He doesn't care about this bishop. He wants to mate the black king here. This is getting pretty scary now for the black king as well. So there are a few questions here. What if knight takes e3? What if knight takes a3? Well, what did Anand play, shall we say? He played takes. Let's examine knight takes e3. I think black king intuitively, is he going to get it or allow this f8 resource? Let's just stick this in the engine. So knight takes e3, takes.
Check.
Now in this position, slaughter time, actually, with, there's a move to slaughter the black king. It's all about timing now. If we can get to the king, f6, what does black do here? If he takes, then that's mate. If he doesn't take, well, is he going to get slaughtered? Let's imagine rook takes a3. Now f8 is mating on g7. It's all about time, isn't it? So rook takes here, he's getting slaughtered. Queen takes queen g7. If I can turn off the engine. Whoops. Okay. I've managed to hang the machine now. I've just managed to hang the machine at a critical moment. Okay, we're back. Okay, I think I'll turn off the engine there. And we seem to have got a full screen. Whoops. Okay. So I hope we're still recording now. So f8. So in the game, pardon me, if we go back to the game continuation. This would be too dangerous, wouldn't it? In this game continuation.
Check.
If he took on e3, we just have a disaster here with taking an f6. Just to recap that.
Check.
Because we have check.
Check.
Then mates here.
Checkmate.
So sorry for the technical issue there, but let's carry on here. If knight takes a3, is there any difference? So if we take here, let's try and work it out without an engine. Take. Okay, there's an imminent threat of rook a1. Is white clearly winning this one? So a quick check. No, I think earlier there might be a better move here. Isn't there? After g6, so knight takes a3. We go with knight takes a3. This is only a small advantage for white apparently. With f8, okay.
Check.
Rook takes. Then queen sack.
Check.
And then bishop d4. That staves off mates on A1 and bishop can be parked on B2. White's got about half a pawn advantage technically, but it's still quite complicated, this position. So say rook A2, bishop B2, quite a complicated position still. Alright, so let's go back to the game continuation. So that almost works out, but it doesn't. So HG was played.
Check.
And now takes, so he took first. Okay, we've got a similar continuation now. But in this position,
check.
Is the queen sack still going to occur?
Check.
Knight check, okay, gaining time for the queen sack. If king G8, I think it will be slaughter time intuitively. I don't think the king has any choice here. King G8, but let's just make sure. Something like, what would happen here? Is it queen E6? No, apparently this is good for black. Queen E6, king H8, and remarkably, this position is also good for black.
Check.
Maybe the checks run out or something. If check here, rook takes F8, there's no queen sack. So the way Anand played it, actually, okay, he allows the queen sack. So we've got an interesting situation here. Okay, now if the queen sack is accepted, then in this position it's still probably okay for black with bishop d4 maybe being the best move, but black might be okay. Rook a2, and he's still got numerous threats. He's hitting the bishop straight away. If that bishop dared to move, then for example queen a8, hitting, well, threatening maybe rook a1 takes, queen a2, king moves, queen c2, as well as queen e4, the bishop dared to move. So in the game continuation, check was played though, maybe even stronger. In this position, rook a1 might be the absolutely strongest move, rejecting that queen sack, even though that is potentially good for black. So Anand goes in this very interesting path now.
Check.
And
Check.
I think he's actually got a forced mate, that's why,
Check.
which is pretty convincing.
Check.
He stops the king escaping.
Check.
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 Check. And if the king dares to go over here, it's going to get mated on e2 with this rook and queen coming in like this. So here actually, White resigned, otherwise he's getting mated anyway with rook a2. So whatever way he goes, he's getting mated.
Check. Check.
Not like that. Queen c2.
Checkmate.
Or like this.
Check.
Queen e2.
Checkmate.
So this, I just want to get that crystal clear perspective on the game. I hope that's been achieved more than the previous analysis of the game about access paths to the kings, and about how specific resources can interfere with the fruits of that concept, like queen a7, key defensive resource in this game that needs to be factored in, and it was factored in. Beautiful double piece sacrifice to really accelerate black's
Check.
lines. Well, initial piece sacrifice was also pretty nifty, giving the piece back. But we have this major disconnection issue, and it looks as though, and apparently Anand said if he doesn't play knight c7, he was lost. It was a process of elimination when this knight c7 comes up, that otherwise he was totally lost. If we think about this, what does black do if black hasn't got knight c7? How do engines rate this position here for black? They rate it, well, better for white. If rook a4, okay, rook d4, if this resource is exchanged off, we're still left with basically clutter and disconnection issues. White not only has the c-file, but potential to win that b3 pawn. If black tries to cling on, it looks as though white has a very comfortable position indeed. So we're talking plus 0.8, nearly a pawn advantage. So the way Anand played it was very, very courageous, and probably the only way to play for a win, remarkably, in this position. Please express your opinions about this double piece sacrifice. How else would you play this position? You've got a major disconnection issue. Okay, you'll only have limited resources after sacrificing 2 pieces. But again, and there's also a very, very key defensive resource to stave off brutality with rook takes a3, mating on a2. Very key resource here, factored in with this move knight c4. It is rather brilliant, the execution of this. Now that these access paths have been created, the execution is absolutely spot on. And okay, white tries to sort of break through to the black king, but
check, check,
it's all about timing. There's no need to accept this queen sacrifice. It's got a forced mate basically now.
check, check,
With the checks.
check, check.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that and got something out of it. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.